What's up everybody, D-Man back, welcome to a brand new video, and it's been a good year for Kong, what with the Skull Island anime and all, and so I wanted to keep that fun time rolling with my unboxing and review of Neca's King Kong. This is their Skull Island version of Kong. Yeah, I've reviewed Neca's Kong a couple times now. I reviewed, of course, the original release and their poster version variant, but now it's time to check out this guy right here, who I believe is more like a desaturated Skull Island version. And again, I'm not exactly going to be focusing as much on the figure here as I am going to be the accessories and the whole package, because it's kind of a retool of their previous releases, although there are a few notable differences. I'm really excited for him because I think it's really hype that Neca did this. Again, Neca did not have the license to anything other than just the brand King Kong. They couldn't do anything else other than just the general vague King Kong of it all. Like, they were allowed to tie into the 1933 story, but only vaguely because they don't have the rights to it exactly. They don't have the rights to the 1933 design, nor do they have the rights to like 2005's Kong or 2017's Kong or anything else like that. So their Kong had to be kind of a general amalgamation of the King Kong character, taking heavy influence from the 1933 film and then going their own way with it. And this figure is a reflection of that, but I think it's really cool that they still tried to do more versions of it, not only because it got them more money, but because they got to explore different things with them. And in this one, they are exploring the Skull Island nature of Kong. I really like the box art. It's very simple and to the point. I like the grayscale color of it. Kong hanging out with a giant, what is that, a log? He's holding a big log here on the side. That's a great image of Kong. There's another good one. That's the more 33-esque face. Back of the box shows him off in action. It looks like he's attacking like a giant lizard or something. And then on the bottom, you've got a couple Kong poses, and then you see some of like Skull Island creatures that you can make him fight. Like I said, I think it's really neat that they did this. I kind of wish they did a T-Rex to go along with the whole King Kong 1933 aesthetic. I wish they went with a very 1933 looking T-Rex to go along with their King Kong line, but unfortunately they didn't, so this is the best we've got. I like the way that they allow you to open up the box to see the ugly window on the inside, which I've never been a big fan of. I never like the big windows on like the monster arts outside of their packaging, but if they're covered up like this, wonderful. Really great boxes, Neca. Neca, you know how to package your figures. There's another one of him posing, showing off his really ranged articulation. That's a cool one. He looks like he's doing a superhero landing right there. And then there's the glimmering Kong behind the glare, sitting in his box. Let's get the boy out. It's pretty dark, so it's kind of hard to tell, but there's like, oh, that's actually got the best angle of it. It looks better on camera than it does in real life. They've got some like splashes of water maybe in the background there, or like the shoreline. I don't entirely know what that's supposed to represent, but it gives a bit of a splash to the background of the box. Now, the way Kong comes is in a lockup. He's in confinement here, where he's connected to his accessory sheet, and you can kind of peel the two apart, although they are taped together. And now they're all separated from one another. So it looks like in total this Kong comes with 2 heads, 1 swappable head. He comes with 6 different hands, so you can have a wide variety of hand poses. Looks like he comes with a giant log, a little lizard, and a pterodactyl. And those two are going to be our first 2 up on the list of who we're going to be talking about. That's crazy. His mouth opens so freaking wide. Kind of hard to decide who to start with, but I really like the pit monster. That's what he's labeled on the box, a pit monster. I really like this guy, and so I want to start out by showing him off first. Very small scale here. Kong is of the 8-inch scale, the actual Kong figure, and this guy is really tiny compared to him, but actually compared to the 1933 film, this guy's way smaller than he should be, as this guy is based on a little critter in the 1933 film, one of the ones that climbs the wall after Jack Driscoll, following the attack on the log. And there's the little ugly fella. He looks so strange, so weird looking. I love him. I love the weird fin on his back. Like, what is that doing there? I like his little grubby arms. And he has just an absolutely hideous face. It's adorable. I really like it. This guy looks all sorts of messed up. I like his big teeth. I like his fangs. I like the whole face. I mean, the benefit here is they're not trying to straight up adapt the lizard from the 1933 film. They're just doing their own thing with him. They're taking inspiration from it, but again, because they don't have the licensing for it, they're not adapting it. And so this guy benefits as a result of he is his own original creation. And I love it. I think this guy's fantastic. He's small, so he'll fit in Kong's hand. That's the point. But there's a lot to love about him, although I wish they gave him articulated arms. I don't know why they didn't. His arms are in that fixed chrome crawling position, which is fine. I just wish he could crawl around a little more, but he does have a head on a ball joint. Like, they put his head on a ball joint as well as his mouth is on a hinge. His mouth can open and close. That's pretty good. I'm impressed by that. 2 points of articulation for a thing this small, like an insignificant little accessory. I love it. This guy's wonderful. I got out a lot of friends for the figure comparison here. And if a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old, depending on when it happened, year-old D-Man didn't explode his Skull Island crocodile from the 2005 King Kong Playmates set, I would be able to compare this guy to another lizard like himself, but instead I got out the Velociraptor. Is that what this is supposed to be? I think this is supposed to be the Raptor, or the V-Raptor, whatever they're called. From King Kong 2005, it's the Velociraptor from the 2005 Kong movie. This was a Playmates release. I just wanted to get the two of them out. I know that the scale is like crazy different for the two of them, but I wanted to get them out because it's kind of the closest little comparison we can get between a Neca Skull Island dinosaur-esque creature to go up against one of its previous counterparts from a different toy company. That's the best comparison I can make here. Of course, I could compare him to the V-Rex from the same Playmates King Kong line. Again, teeny little guy. Just wanted to show the two off together because I wanted to show off not only the scale difference between these, but just the different approach to a Skull Island critter for Kong to fight. Now, this guy is based on the 1933 little lizard that climbs up the pit, and he is the direct inspiration for the Skullcrawler. So here is the Leonard Toys Skullcrawler from 2017. There's the two of them together. I mean, obviously Leonard's just towers over that little guy, but I wanted to show the two off together, especially when we can get like an under view where you can see the actual inspiration where it comes in. Oh, he's like the baby Skullcrawler. It's a little Skullcrawler baby. The two of them could be little buddies. Look at those guys. Next up, and to show a little bit of scale, here's our pterosaur. This is clearly pterodactyl inspired, and I love how ugly his face is. I mean, look at those horrible beady little eyes. This guy looks like an absolute creep and a menace. As far as articulation goes, this guy's got the widest jaw opening I've ever seen on one of these guys. It's ridiculous. And then his head is on a full ball joint. You can look up a little bit, look down a little bit, and all around. Unfortunately, the wings, while you can bend them just fine, that's fine to flap them. They can't hold any poses. They don't have like any strong structure to them to hold a pose, but you can flap them around and make them fly. Obviously, again, this is based on the pterodactyl that attacks Kong at the end of the 1933 King Kong film, but the scale is nowhere near accurate. This one's very small. It's a little more like realistic pterosaur sized compared to the Kong they have, but I wanted to show him off. I really like the paint on this guy. That's something I should mention here as well. Like if I'm going over these as actual figures, got really nice sculpting details on the bottom of him. I really like the attention to detail they gave for the sculpt on this guy. He's got a really great skin pattern. His face has a lot of texture. His teeth are all individually sculpted and individually painted. This guy's painted wonderfully, and so is this guy. Although his front looks pretty bland with it mostly just being this reddish brownish color, his back has these really nice highlights of red and these blue dots. Now his blue dots are uneven with there being more on this wing than there are on this wing, and that's unfortunate that they're not a little more symmetrical, but I really like the fact that they just added it. Like it's a nice splash of color on the back and makes this guy stand out, makes him a little more unique. So just shout out to them for making two really cool, in my opinion, really cool accessories. I've got an assortment of flying creatures we can compare this guy to, starting out with the 2005 Playmates Skull Island Bat. Now these guys are a little more scaled together, like these guys can stand up to one another. I like it. I like the two of them together. This one's somehow more hideous than this creep, but I like them. This one was a little easier to flex the wings on and to bend in a way that didn't feel like you were harming the figure, and so that's a benefit of this guy, but I do like that the head articulates on this one. Then we've got our Leonard Toys Leaf Wing, which I've never noticed until today. Looks absolutely nothing like a leaf wing from the Kong Skull Island movie. In fact, I'm not even certain that's what this creature is. I remember that's what it was marketed as. That scale is like wildly different, but again, this was its own figure. Like this was its own toy with its own play set, so there's a difference between the scale and the two for sure. This one's not an accessory, but there's the two sitting up next to each other, again showing the difference in approach on having a creature for Kong to fight. And then finally, to go with something a little more in scale, here's the 3.5-inch Rodan. These two guys match up together well. I mean, that's a good fight, these guys right here. And obviously Neca is a lot better than the Jakks Pacific Rodan. This Jakks Pacific Rodan from 2019 is one of the lower end figures, and I actually do think that although this one's got a little more apparent skin texturing and a little better articulation, as far as we're concerned, this is an accessory, and it in many ways outshines the Rodan because this is from a higher end figure company. But enough of those guys, let's get into the main event here. We've got Kong, we've got a bunch of swappable hands for him, like I said, so he can have a bunch of different hand postures. He's got a more like half-closed hand, he's got a fist, and then he's got an open palmed grip. The final accessory here being a giant log, which is really well textured and really well painted. It's a good weapon for Kong to have, very 2017 Kong Skull Island using the giant log as a weapon, but I guess Kong tried to do the same in the 1933 film. I can't remember if it makes it into the movie or not. Oh, I think it does. I think he shove it down the dinosaur's throat in the movie. Well, he definitely does in the promotional image. Had to free Kong from captivity, just like in the movie. Into the main event himself, I've already reviewed this figure basically twice now, but I want to mention, as I've mentioned in other videos, because maybe you haven't seen those, I think this is an absolutely wonderful figure. I think they absolutely knocked it out of the park. It has a wonderful sculpt with really rich and in-depth texturing. There's so many great details here. I particularly think the back brings out the muscle structure very well. He's got wonderful scarring all over his body. Just a really rich and refined fur pattern, probably the best to ever hit markets as far as King Kong figures are concerned, at least like action figure-y type King Kong figures, I should say. I think the fur patterning is generally speaking better than SH Monster Arts. I think it's just more rich and in-depth. Although there is a difference in the fact that this is an 8-inch scale, so there's a lot more real estate to work with here than like the 5 to 6-inch Monster Arts figure, so there's a lot more real estate here. Just overall, they've done a really, really good job with this guy. As far as articulation is concerned, they've done a really great job trying to bring out the most movement with this guy possible. I'm counting 22 joints of articulation, with joints in the wrist, the arm, the elbow, the forearm, the shoulder, the chest, the head, in this instance, for the first time ever, the mouth. That's fantastic, Neca. I finally have got what I've been asking for. The mouth articulates on this one when it didn't used to. Great stuff. The upper thigh, the knee, the calf, and then the foot. So much wonderful articulation in this figure. You can get him into some incredible poses. Like this one would be a great one for toy photography or stop motion, especially because the scale allows you to do a lot with him and he just looks wonderful. So I want to shout this figure out again for all of the things it does right, because it does so many things right. I really love this guy. He can do so much and there's so much potential with this figure. You just got to learn how to work with him and move him in ways that allow him to do the things that you want him to do, because he can do so much. He also comes with one swappable head. So this is a more 1933 styled head with the more 1933 styled details, now with the ability to open his friggin' mouth. And although he doesn't have the greatest range of motion, that is what I've been asking for. It's really wonderful. This captures the 33 face very well with the closed mouth. Then you open it and he looks super monstrous and awesome. It's great stuff. They've also revamped the face design, so he now features all new and all different scratches, with these ones being a lot more aggressive and bloody than the ones on the original release. It looks wonderful. Not only that, but they gave him this incredible substitute head, which is so angry. This is a very first release. This is not one of the substitute heads with the previous Kongs. I love the new scratches, bloody as ever, on his face. He just looks absolutely wonderful. And the two faces now with the closed mouth really highlights the difference between the two. One of them is going for a more cartoonish 1933 style, while the other one's going for a much more aggressive, badass look. Another alteration they've made to the face is that rather than giving Kong the brown eyes he's had up to this point with the Neca releases, they've swapped him out for gray eyes. I don't know why they did that. It's a small touch, but I really appreciate it. As far as figure comparisons are concerned, because that's kind of the bulk of what the discussion on this guy should be about, does he justify his existence given that they've already released him before? Well, on the whole, and it's not terribly noticeable, I think all the differences they've made so far have been for the better, with the one exception of his feet. I think the original Kong had a much better paint job on his feet. I think that just overall brought out the sculpt a little better than what we're seeing on the new Kong. But everywhere else on the entire body, they've made the highlights more subtle, they've made the shadows more subtle, they make them more realistic. So he comes across looking a lot stronger. I really like the new release more than the original. I think they've improved upon it. Now, does that necessarily justify its existence? Not exactly, because they could have just done better the first time around and then you wouldn't need it. But I appreciate the attention to detail. They're not just releasing the same figure another time. They've gone in, they've given him a stronger paint job. The paint job now brings out a lot more of the sculpt. In fact, I stared at these guys for quite a while trying to figure out, did they resculpt him or not? They didn't. It's the same sculpt, they've just painted him differently. For instance, like the chest scars on these two, they look a lot more aggressive and real on the new release than on the original, where they look a lot more animated and bright. And you can see, even from back here, the original release just kind of comes across as a bit more brown when the new one comes across a bit more monotone. And it's not because they've washed him away. Like, I kind of thought that this would be a semi black and white figure. They haven't done that. All they've done is make him more subtle, with the exception of the scars. and the scars add so much life to Kong. Peter Jackson knew what he was doing with the 2005 Kong when he gave him all those scars all over the place. It brought so much life and character to Kong, and it obviously carries over into the 2017 film where they do the same thing. And it really helps the character of Kong. It makes him stand out and pop. And Neca obviously brought a similar touch to these guys. And on the new Kong, they've made them a deeper and more vibrant red, so they immediately stand out more than on the original release. That's a great thing to do. Also, like I said, on the new release, they made the face scars way stronger. They're just way more impressive. They stand out way better. It just looks overall better. Also, they articulated the jaw now. So now his jaw opens and closes, which it can't on the original. So you don't even necessarily need to swap the heads out. I personally prefer this 1933 head. I prefer the new scars on it. I think it looks great. I think the new eye color is very striking and strange. While I prefer the original brown eyes, the gray ones are something really unsettlingly lifelike to them. They've done a really good job with it. So I like the new scars. The eyes are just more striking, even though I don't like them as much. The mouth can articulate. Overall, the new head is better in almost every regard other than like articulation, which is the same. They've improved upon the original release. Can't remember how many hands the original release came with, but I also really like these kind of in-between fully open and closed hands that can grip stuff. I really like that. I think I'm going to leave them on this Kong. Now there are some mistakes with this guy. Like if you look on my 33 head, some of the teeth have like these paint chips in them where it comes out a little more brown than what you want. Like you can see the brown underneath the white paint they've put on the teeth, and that's not great. Also, the new articulated jaw is not as seamless as it could be. Like it kind of stands out from certain angles very awkwardly, which won't be too much of an issue for me because despite the fact that I like this head better, it goes bye-bye. In return, I want this more unique, aggressive face, which again, it's not perfect because now he's got so much blood on his head that you'd expect it to carry over into his body, and it doesn't. But this new face is just wonderful. It's just so angry and awesome. I love it. I really like it. I wish this one had an articulated mouth. It doesn't. That's a shame. Again, another kind of knock against the figure, but I like that they're trying new things out. He does scale kind of awkwardly with his accessories. Like they're just so small compared to him that it's almost unnoticeable, but I appreciate that they're there. I wish they were a little bigger so he could fight them better. The log looks great with him anyways, so that's a plus. But yeah, I just wish the monsters were a little bigger that went with him. Kind of awkward to try and make him hold all of them at once. I'm pretty happy with this figure. I think that a lot of people could be like, it's just not worth it. Do these tiny little accessories and the new faces really justify the new figure? That's going to be a matter of personal preference. For me, I don't feel ripped off at all. I feel like both figures stand well on their own side by side. I feel like he does in general justify his need to exist. Not by a ton, but he does. They made improvements to the paint job that I didn't think that they would, and that brought out the sculpt better. Although the articulation is the same, they've added a new head with an articulated mouth addressing one of the biggest issues with the original release. They've also given this one a lot more accessories and room to play with. I think it's overall an improvement on the original, and that's why I do think it justifies its existence in a big way. So here's the two of them standing next to each other. They obviously look great together. They're gonna look great together. They're a pair. Good stuff. Two Kongs, you can't go wrong with that. Unless your King Kong lives, and then you can. Here he is next to the poster version variant. The poster version variant does not, it does not do as much as this one does, I would say, to justify its existence. I think this one is much stronger figure than the poster variant, but there's the two of them together. Obviously, they're looking good together again because they're a pair. They look good together for obvious reasons, but there's the two of them standing next to one another, just so you can see the difference in Neca's approach to Kong variant figures. Speaking of re-released Kongs, here is the SH Monster Arts Kong standing next to the Neca one. This is the SH Monster Arts Victory version, which took a very similar approach, giving new scars to the Kong, giving him new accessories to play with, addressing certain issues with the original release, and also giving him an angry, gritty teeth version. So there's the two of them standing next to each other. I love the fact that both of these exist. I don't feel ripped off owning either of them. I think they're wonderful. I also like that, like I said, you have now two different versions of the gritted teeth Kong. Very different figures going for very different things as far as articulation goes and accessories. I would say that the SH one is overall better. The Neca one kind of outshines it in terms of the richness and depth of the sculpt and paint job. So it comes down to what you're looking for. There you go. If you want my honest opinion on Neca versus SH Monster Arts, Neca's probably the better deal, but Monster Arts has its place. Is that consistent with what I talked about when I reviewed the figures? Can't remember. This is actually my Chimera Kong, by the way, for those of you who were astute observers. This is not the one with the scratches and stuff. This is only sort of the Victory version Kong. It's the one with the accessory axe and also the gritted teeth face, but the body is of the original Kong. I just kind of mixed and matched pieces following my review for the figure. Why not show him off standing next to the V-Rex? It's a lot smaller than he is, but at least the V-Rex can try and fight him. Grab onto that arm a little bit. Another guy who can open his jaw really wide. This guy, although in this case, it's because he dies like that. So there's the two of them next to each other. Speaking of those 2005 Playmates Kongs, I just wanted to show off a lower end approach to a King Kong figure versus a middle end approach to a King Kong figure. It's because we've already done an SH comparison, which is a higher end figure. This is a lower end figure. It's another step in the chain. I just wanted to show off the difference in approach. And again, just to mention that the scars really do add a lot of life to Kong. And obviously in this case, while the 2005 Playmates Kong is wonderful, the Neca one outshines it. The Neca Kong definitely outshines the modern day Playmates low end Kong. This is the 2017 Kong, and there's the two of them standing next to each other. They look semi-good together. The Neca one just obviously in every single regard outshines the current day Playmates Kong, because current day Playmates is not as good as they were in 2005. So there's the two standing next to one another, but at least they come with weapon accessories together. And then the final comparison of the video, Neca's Godzilla 1962, the one who fought a King Kong, standing off against Kong himself. There's the two of them together. That's the matchup we've been waiting for, an aggressive Kong that can fight Godzilla in a way that maybe that tree will do something. Oh, you know what it'll do? It'll do exactly this. It goes in his mouth just perfectly, because obviously his mouth's constructed for the atomic breath. Now, the scale here is really brought to life when you see the 8-inch Kong against, I think, a 5-inch Godzilla, because the Godzilla is just like dangling in the air, caught by the mouth. That's a kill blow for this teeny little Godzilla. Oh my god. It's a good thing Kong isn't significantly larger than poor Godzilla. Let it go, Godzilla. You don't need it. So I guess there's the two of them together standing off. Again, Godzilla's just so tiny compared to him that it's awkward, but I'm glad that they both exist. Shout out Neca for making them both exist. So that was Neca's re-released Skull Island variant of Kong with the accessories. Overall, I think it's an improvement on the original Kong. I think the paint's better. I think the sculpt comes out better because of the paint job. The faces are better. Both of them are better. The accessories are a lot of fun. Overall, I'm going to give the advantage to the re-release over the original. I'm going to give this guy a solid 9 out of 10, with the only things being, I just wish there was like a little more quality control in that articulated face sculpt that I have, because it has some paint splotches on it. And I wish that the swappable head could also articulate his mouth and open and close his jaw, but I think they're wonderful. I really like it. 9 out of 10. Solid King Kong figure. Big fan of it. Glad that I got it. Shout out Neca. And that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you all for watching. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below. By supporting the Patreon, you are directly supporting this channel and contributing to making sure that I can keep making videos like this for you guys. Specifically, these unboxings are able to be made through the generous support through the Patreon. By supporting the Patreon, you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.